everyone today to the May 26th edition of the bi-weekly update here at Gentian. It's a good chance for us to give you an idea of what's hot or what's on the top of our mind right now and a few things that may help you. So whether you're watching it now or whether you're watching it later, think about that. There's no way you can be watching it any other time than now. At any rate, just welcome you all here. Good to see you. I'm glad that you're on duty today, which is nice on a beautiful 70-degree day in May. So we look forward to giving you a couple of different ideas today. We'll bring on Lisa in just a moment to go over some of the housekeeping as well. But I know what's occurred recently here is about 2 weeks ago, the leaves were just starting to bud. And I really love trees before they bud. The nice thing about it is, it's very nice out there. You're just starting to see some spring growth, but you've seen now all the leaves come out here. And now I'm a little bit afraid of these trees. You know why? Because they're so shady. Starting with a dad joke for the kids anyway. Thought I'd start with that one. I love that piece as well. But a couple of different ideas today, and then I'll hop over to Lisa for some of the housekeeping. But there's a lot going on in a lot of different categories here. Market had a bit of a correction, 5, 6, 8%, then it recovered. Cryptocurrencies had a 45% correction or 40% correction, and they kind of recovered, went back and forth. There's a lot of talk around cryptocurrency. We'll touch on that as well. We'll talk a little bit about some tax acts that are going on, of course, because every 3 seconds that you wait, there's a new tax act going on. We talked with Ed Slott a little bit about some of those, and there's some things coming up on some propositions on a bunch of different categories that we'll talk about as well. Also, the Bucks win the first 2 games of the playoff from last year. Phil Mickelson wins the U.S. Open, which is pretty crazy at 50. He talked about how that happened and how he was, surrounded by people and enveloped by them. It was kind of the craziest thing you've seen. But a lot of neat stuff happening here, but really what's most important to you is some of the different items happening in the market. And really the thing that's most important to us to give to you is what you want. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lisa for housekeeping to give you all the important stuff and all the things going on here at Gentian.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. As Chris said, it's a beautiful day. But that will soon change in Wisconsin by tomorrow. Just wanted to let you know that our office will be closed for Memorial Day, May the 31st. So hope you all have a wonderful Memorial weekend. Also, Gentian is a proud sponsor of Jazz in the Park at the Thiensville Village Park on Sunday, June the 6th from noon till 7 p.m. And we have a designated Gentian VIP area. So we are looking forward to seeing whoever can join us. So that will be fun. Also, our Gentian Summer Forum will be held on Wednesday, June the 16th at 10 a.m. Please remember to RSVP as we'll be entered into a lottery system to attend the event, as we can only allow so many people. June the 2nd will be the lottery winners announcement and notified. The event is at the River Club. So June the 16th, that's at the River Club for our Summer Forum. Our new Ladies and Gentian event, which is our webinar with the Gentian ladies and a lot of our women clients. That's June the 24th, it's a Thursday. If you could please RSVP by June the 2nd, that would be wonderful. And we look forward to seeing as many women as we possibly can. Always look forward to those events. Our review meetings are still going on, so please watch out for Calendly invites. Weather permitting, we are doing some outside, but we still, if you prefer a Zoom call or a phone, that is still definitely allowed. So, but weather permitting, we will be doing some outside as well. So we look forward to seeing you and starting to open up slowly, but definitely look forward to getting to see you all again in person. And have a wonderful Memorial weekend, and I'll hand it back to Chris.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. So the Jazz in the Park as well isn't a big formal event. It's actually a free event. So parking is going to be difficult as you get there. Just make sure you're ready to walk a little bit. You might bring a chair to hang out with as well. It's just a great afternoon, I think, of jazz if you like it. A reason to be out in the park. It's outside. So for many of you, it'll be just it's not one of the formal events that you'll see from us, but just kind of a gathering community type event in Thiensville, right on the river. So at any rate, it should be a wonderful time there as well. So you might see some of our smiling faces there most of the day, which will be fun too. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. So this week I want to actually say, I want to title this one, Expect the Unexpected. It's something in life we've looked at. I often look at preparation, and preparation over time, people say, what should I look out for? What should I look out for? And they're always trying to really scenario plan. And that's a great thing. But I actually say expecting the unexpected is probably the single most important thing you can do. You've all heard of the term VUCA. You've all seen what's going on. For instance, if you looked just 2 weeks ago, there was a massive war going on the Gaza Strip, right? Now there's a ceasefire. What do you think might occur next week? Just expect the unexpected. There's a lot of turmoil, a lot of turbulence. Expect the unexpected. 2 weeks ago, you had to wear a face mask everywhere. A couple weeks later, they say, no, you don't have to if you're vaccinated. And then now the trouble of people walk into a store, they have no idea who's vaccinated, who's not. You don't have a card, you don't have a stamp. But expecting the unexpected is probably the best way to live because life is full of unexpected things. Things happen every day to you, me, in the markets, in the investments, planning, taxes. And I think expecting the unexpected is part of what we do. I call it the Advisor Full Employment Act whenever Congress starts talking. Because again, just interpreting this is a massive part of this. Ken, myself, Zach, Mike, Ryan, Peter, the whole team, Lisa, actually everybody on the team has to interpret these things and decide what's important to tell you because there's so much hearsay going on. Chuck Grassley, from the state that I'm from, is a senator who's just proposing all sorts of things. He's on the Finance and Ways and Means Committee. He was in Congress when I was in school, which is like 100 years ago. I think he might be 112 at this point in time. But again, it's just interesting to see they are putting through all sorts of legislation to try to shore up what they did the first time. But what's interesting about expect the unexpected, you can expect it in different asset classes. Like they're going to call, people all of a sudden value is going to be in fire for 8 or 9 years, they think. Well, maybe not. You're looking at things happening politically. You never know what's going to happen politically. You've seen, racist turn. But I really think it's a great way to prepare for the bigger picture. We want to make it look much more, we want to make VUCA, we want to make the unpreparedness, if you will, of life seem much more normal. So at any rate, that's a couple of things. Some of the biggest things I said a little bit before, Phil Mickelson 50 winning the US Open, which is great. I have a hard time because now the US Open is in May, but it was in Kiawah Island, a great course, but he tended to fend off a couple of the, younger, stronger kids, and they're asking how he did it. There's a lot to do with fasting and diet. We started talking about health. So he says he can keep himself, his body fit, and he can keep himself young with this certain diet and fasting. Obviously, as we know more, we'll pass that on to you. There's a lot of things we've done with Michelle, and she's great on the health side of the equation. We'll continue to pass those along, but it's not just about living, it's about living vital, and living vital when we can. The Secure Act 2.0, I think Ken may talk about a bit about that as well. Crypto asset classes that are going on is another thing there. Might call it an asset class. It is a currency, don't get me wrong. It is a currency. There's about 5,000 to 50,000. It reminds me of networking. Years ago, before Cisco System became the big company, there was 1,000 companies networking, and now there's about 3. At any rate, it's kind of interesting to watch as well. The next one is going to be, Bucks winning. You'll see that baseball is going to be back at full steam coming up. You're going to see a lot of sporting events coming up full steam, and I think June 25th. That's good news for a lot of you who'd like to get back to some normal. And then my favorite word that I made up, I don't know when I made it up, and maybe somebody else already has, but I've never heard it, was vaxcations. You guys are all taking vaxcations, which is as soon as you're vaccinated fully, you're taking a vacation somewhere because now you can. And I love the vaxcation. There's a couple of other words I made up, but that's my favorite one. And it's good to see you all out prepared. You can see the excitement. It's like kids getting out of school now. You're able to go visit people. You're able to go on a plane. You're able to take trips. You're scheduling trips. So we see the need for the budget that you probably anticipated now occurring, and maybe even a little bit more. So be careful on that one. I say that as part of the joke. But one huge thing, and I'm going to talk about this after Zach talks, we talked to Jeremy Siegel for a couple of moments, if you will, for about an hour, if you will, about a week and a half ago. And I'll share a little bit more of that. But before I do, let me pass it over to Zach for some of the market update.
Thank you, Chris. And before we jump in, just wanted to touch on the vaxcations, because that is actually my go big today as well. And my gratitude for today is the hope that that's instilling, even though there's still a lot of uncertainty that Chris mentioned. It's just great to hear that you guys are getting together with family more and potentially going through those travel plans that you may have had put off for the last year or so. So extremely grateful to hear all of those stories from each of you. As far as updates on the markets today, we have updates just as far as equities, where they're currently at, the disparity between growth and value still so far this year. A couple fixed income updates and how that's changed a little bit even in the last 2 weeks. And then also just an incredible fact that we saw recently of, since market bottom, March 23rd of 2020, where are things at today? And then just another crazy, interesting fact that we heard from Nick Murray in his recent newsletter. So starting out here with the current market updates, S&P 500 year to date, it's currently up 11.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, 12.11%. The NASDAQ, which tends to lean a little bit heavier towards technology, about 49% of that index, is up 6.48%. And then the Russell 2000, which tends to track mid cap and small caps, 11.69%. But inside of there, the value and growth disparity that we mentioned, the Russell 2000 value index is up 22.7%, and the growth side is up 1.53%. So just another great example that we've continued to talk about of we don't know which time one's going to do better than the other, so we own both. On the fixed income side of things, the current treasury yields, the 1-year treasury yield is 0.06%, the 5-year 0.83%, the 10-year 1.63, and the 30-year 2.35. No increase from 2 weeks ago when we mentioned these numbers on the 1-year, but slight increases across the board on the current yields across the other time frames. Remember, bonds have an inverse relationship with interest rates. So when we took a look at this, we saw this about a week ago and just wanted to highlight this and also to congratulate you if you stuck to your plan and stuck through the downturn, the temporary market correction that we had last March. Last March 23rd, the S&P 500 was at 2,237. As of market close yesterday, it was 4,188, or an 87.2% increase. The NASDAQ, March 23rd of last year, was 6,860. Market close yesterday, 13,657, or a 99.1% increase. So congratulations to those of you that had your faith, patience, and discipline through that and stuck to your long-term plan. So that is absolutely massive. And along those same lines, in Nick Murray's recent newsletter that he mentioned on May 10th, he stated on April 9th, the Bank of America found more money went into equity funds in the past 5 months than it did in the previous 12 years. I'll say that again. More money went into equity funds in the past 5 months than it did in the previous 12 years. The S&P 500 bottomed out in March 2009 at 677. And in the 5 months we just mentioned, starting April 9th of this year, shot up 24% from 3,300 to 4,100. In the words of Nick Murray, in other words, halfway serious equity inflows didn't get underway until the market had quintupled. So just goes to show how human nature works against us at times if we let it. So didn't have time to go through it today, but next time, you always hear us mention how the different asset classes, how we try to diversify them because we don't know which ones are going to do better when. We also want to stay diversified within different market sectors as well. So we'll go through that next webinar. But with that, I'll pass it back to Chris.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it. So it's kind of what you're saying is people are late to the party again. I mean, if you have a 10 or 11 years of a phenomenal market and people just start putting money in, it's amazing. But if you remember, even in 2000, you saw a lot of people from 1995 to 2000. You saw almost 20% returns per year for the last 5 years of that 20-year bull market. So it's not unlike it. I think the key is people think it's different this time, and it's only different in the fact that you haven't read the history of the past. So it might be a different name, but it's the same emotional reaction, I think, is what causes the markets up and down. So thank you, Zach. That's absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate it. So I'm going to go into real quick. We had a fantastic opportunity. So one of Nick Murray's and one of mine, there's about 5 people I listened to: Brian Westbury, Nick Murray, Jeremy Siegel. There's a few others, but the ones that I listened to, Jeremy Siegel, we actually had an hour with him about a week and a half ago, if you will. And a couple of important points came to mind. I'll tell you what they are real quick. When it went in, he is basically a historian who's now at Wharton School of Economics. He studied with Milton Friedman and pretty much all the credentials you'd ever want to see. But he's a market statistical historian. And he says that for the last 150 years, we've averaged about 6.5% above inflation. So it's about a 9.5% return, if you will, to 10% return for the last 150, almost 200 years. So he said that's been pretty common. But there's a couple of things going on now that we really want to take a look at. Number one, this one is different. This federal aid went directly into the hands of consumers. When that happens, it causes inflation, which we've talked about. So it's also different in that it's 9 times greater than the bank, if you will, recovery, or maybe the bank rescue plan, if you will, back in 2008 and 9. The difference then too is it went into banks' reserves so that they could have assets and their banks would be solvent, right? What's really interesting about this, though, as you take a look, is when you're looking at what's occurred today in the inflation, Jeremy Siegel has said there'll be probably 20% inflation over the next 4 to 5 years. So you're actually going to see it massively increase. So the dollar that you have now, 5 years from now, will be worth about 20 cents. Now he said, I'm watching the movie. I've been in it before. I understand what it is. Milton Friedman has taught it. He goes, I've looked at it. We've seen it. This is what happens. He says the bull market, the 40-year bull market in bonds is over. Going forward, expect 4.5% above inflation returns on equities, not because equities are going to be bad necessarily, but just because inflation will be much higher on the next 5 and 10 years. And that's going to cause a couple of very interesting pieces we'll need to adjust. Also, expect a -1% on the average of the bond behind inflation. So at bonds actually would be a money-losing item behind inflation, and that's not been the case for the last 40 years. Why is this important? Because if you look at a 50-50 bond stock mix, which a lot of people think is a retirement allocation, you're going to find a much greater risk because half your assets are getting -1, half are getting, let's call it 4. That averages about a, what you put it together, about a 2%, -1 plus 4 gives me 3 divided by 2. That's a 1.5% above inflation portfolio return. So if you have that for a long period of time, you actually have a much greater chance of running out of money if you're taking excess distributions. So these are the kind of things you model in perspective. Most advisors won't be paying any attention to this, but this is paramount to what we do in planning. It doesn't say the markets are going to necessarily correct anytime soon. What it does say, when the Fed hits the brakes, you actually might see some equity, some stock, if you will, corrections. But historically, during this, stocks give us one of the greatest returns over inflation. It's something that he said as well. So these are a lot of great pieces he'd shown us. I just wanted to go through that because it's a super important piece to the bigger picture. I really enjoyed the discussion. Some great questions came in, but I distilled about 4 and 5 pages of notes, maybe 6 pages of notes into those 5 points. So I just wanted to give you that piece as well. One other thing, I actually finished as well just recently a book review on a book called The Outward Mindset. There's some very, very cool things I think I brought to you guys before, but I want to give you a quick summary here, if I may, on some of those as well. So a couple of things that we typically will look at as well across the board, and I'll maybe hit on this first. Some of the things we look at right now, the Secure Act 2.0, there's some clarifications, and they're trying to make retirement investing easier, because despite a lot of people putting a lot of money into retirement, there's still quite a few who aren't. And what they're really concerned about is that Social Security is meant to cover about 50% of what we need or so for retirement, yet 90% of people in America are planning living solely on that. So when you look at this, there's kind of an equation that's not working well here, if you will, for just people saving money. So they're trying to, the intention is, whether they do it the way you want it or not, their intention is for people to save money to supplement the 50% that they're going to need outside of Social Security rather than working until 80 or 90 years old. So it's got the right intention, but a lot of talk right now at Secure Act, a lot of talk about taxes, a lot of talk about inflation is really, really going on. If you want to flip this over as well, one thing Jeremy Siegel had said too is that he believes gold could be 50% higher if cryptocurrencies didn't exist. So you're seeing a lot of money in there. Somebody recently kind of jumping into the cryptocurrency guide as well. Somebody recently said, you remember all that money laundering that used to go through banks? Guess where the money for a lot of those illicit trades, drug trades and other things are now? It's in an unregulated market, untethered to any government law. So if you're an ESG, that's an emotional, social, and good investor, when you look at cryptocurrencies, you may want to take a second, third, and fourth look and say, that's not for me. Now, that's what somebody had brought up, which is an interesting point. It was an expert who had looked at regulating this cryptocurrency, regulating where it comes from, being able to trace it and see it. The nice thing about blockchains is you should be able to see where the money's from, and it should be an easy remedy to that as well. But as you look at, again, cryptocurrencies, what I noticed is I was at a party this weekend, and there's a lot of talk about these things. So most people are getting their misinformation from each other, just like it is with COVID, just like it is with masks, just like it is with everything. People love to talk about stuff they know very little about, or they heard from a guy at a party, right? I tend to be the one who will say, that's interesting, but let me look at the facts. My usual response when somebody brings up that's absurd, I go, interesting. Where others will take that and know, really, well, that's what this guy said. So I look to experts, I look to people, I look to facts as well. So those are quite a few big things that we see as well. A couple of different items as well. I wanted to kind of go through, I had this book summary up here, and really, really interesting. You guys may want these. I'll probably post these, if you will, to our website coming up as well. But the book, The Outward Mindset, really gave us it's a fantastic idea on saying the central idea is to place your focus outward on those who you're affecting and the needs, what they really want. Not what you want to tell them, but really what others need. So for instance, for yourself, we can tell you a whole bunch of stuff you may or may not need. You may not know the questions to ask, so we'll give you that. But we really want to know, what are you concerned with now? I mean, some questions you might have are funeral trusts. What do I do at the end of life? What happens if my spouse, predeceases me? What happens in all these scenarios? Those are things we are prepared for. We recently had 3 or 4 good comments too, from some of our clients we'd sent to partners, which are going to be Medicare planning, Medicare insurance planning as well. There's a bunch of things that we've had really recently that are very, very fortunate. We've had some great partners, if you will, but there's a lot of questions out there. We want to find be a resource and want to find a source for you to be able to solve those. So I want to make sure that you understand that in the bigger picture as well. So when we're looking at this, the book, the main idea is seek to think outside of yourself and create more than you consume. That's a great equation. Do you create more than you consume? Another one is meet people where they are. Discover their mindset. You will never change anyone's idea if you tell them what they should do, but you may have a chance if you understand where they're coming from first before you start a conversation. So that's a big side as well. We all overrate ourselves on how great we are at everything. I've noticed this, I've seen it in my industry, but I've studied this in behavioral economics and finance for my whole career. We've talked about it many times. We all believe we're better at everything than everyone else. And I remember there's a t-shirt that I had that says, remember, 50% of the people you know are below average. Another one as well, obsess on the value you create, not on the value you receive or consume. Do not be tormented by someone else's mindset. There was a great example of somebody who this person's father had been really, really rude and mean to them their whole life, and he just had told them all sorts of derogative things. And so he had led the rest of his life after his father had passed away with this horrible mindset, really doing bad things to himself, bad things to others around him. And then this young girl said to him, wasn't that your father's mindset? Wasn't that your father's thought? Yeah. Well, he's not here. This is your mind. Why don't you make a different decision? Literally just that conversation with that young girl who maybe seemed callous at the time, turned his life around. Because you're right, this is my mindset. And it wasn't easy, but it was a massive difference. So don't let someone else's mindset, it's probably your parents, your mother, your father, you can figure out who it was, a teacher, but don't let their mindset drive you. Be a survivor, don't be a victim. It's a big difference as well. What is our influence? I call it the butterfly effect. So what little tiny things occurred that made a massive difference on you as well. So it's a big piece. When I call the butterfly effect, the butterfly flaps its wings here and it creates a tsunami in Tokyo. So little tiny good, and I like to liken that to good behavior. Good behavior makes a massive difference long term. So and it's a massive difference to the world. Behavior changes when you address a mindset. Otherwise, it only changes for a moment and then reverts back to normal. Modern self-help is nihilistic. I don't know what nihilistic means, but it was a great word I copied. So I like to use that one because it basically means it's very self-serving. It's in isolation versus together. People, and you're about to see it now, are much happier together. But you've seen people have become the kings and queens of their own world with their own opinion being the only thing they've really heard for the last year. And that's about to change. So be patient with people. They're going to get back together, but they may have lost social graces. They may have lost, the ability to think outside themselves. So let's be the solution to that. That's another great one from the book. Here's a good one. We are who we are with others. Take a while. That one's a good line. I've used that quite a bit and thinking that myself in ruminations. But at any rate, there's some great questions that come from this, like how does the outward mindset work on families? How influential are you and to who? You'd be surprised when you go through that question. You're influential to thousands of people. How big would your life be if you're only able to be smaller in it? Are you the center of everything for all your conversation, your thoughts, or are you outward thinking? It's a great question. What are your needs? I like to ask the question, is what I'm doing right now helping you? Flip that question around to somebody else, a spouse, a child, a neighbor. Is what I'm doing right now helping you? Great question as well. And then what can I do to be more helpful at work, at home, at church, etc. Anyway, I really appreciate some of those pieces as well. I had to fill up space here because Ken's having some technical difficulties. He fell off, but I luckily I probably have like 15 different things I could go over here as well. But I just wanted to go through a couple. But really, technology is great, but the elephant in the room is kind of funny. I always hear about that. But what do you call an elephant that doesn't matter? Irrelevant. Anyway, I like that one as well. I think that's a good one to give on the dad joke side of the equation. I really think though today, if I'm kind of looking in summary here in the next few minutes, it's about who you are, what you want. We have a bunch of technical things we go through and what we do. We've got the returns of the market. We can't control the go forward basis. So you'll hear we don't talk a lot about it. A lot of people do. I think a lot of people, we're going to put out a paper as well that is a great piece about, I think this is very much a reopening. It's more of a restart, if you will. And that reopening is not a recovery. It's not a massive recession. It's actually more of a restart of the economy that we had, more of a repercolation of what was happening before. But the economy was quite good before this, and you're finding it's actually quite good again here. That being said, the biggest trouble we're having right now across the board is trying to find people to print those little now hiring signs, because you can't find them anywhere because everybody's hiring. So you look at that, everywhere you go, we're hiring. And some people have said that we're giving so much away right now that people who make the $7.75 an hour are making about 40% more by staying at home until September. So they're finding a tough time finding the entry-level workers, if you will. So again, there's a lot of debate on that stuff going on, but we've heard several people, Brian Westbury and others, say that as well, some of the economists we follow, which has been an interesting piece too. But I really say, if we look at what's going on right now, I love to look at your behavior. I love to congratulate you on your behavior, because almost every single one of you, and I mean the majority has done a wonderful job during this. You don't make crazy market timing adjustments. You do stick to plan, which has been great. But hopefully the preparation of what we've done over the last 20 years has made a big difference in that as well. You become great investors, and we champion that. We love your achievements. We love what you have with the successful retirement we've had. And we want to make sure we're doing the plan it, live it, and give it. Those are three aspects of what it is we do. I've added a fourth, which for some of you is inherited. Unfortunately, your parents are passing away. So we've got really modules, and if you will, focus on each one of those. So it's about you as a whole person. So you'll see different things from us in that slide. But what I want to do for you is really wanted to run through today, give you a couple of different ideas. The one thing I didn't do yet is future loop, and I can do the technology. Somebody recently, I've forgotten that a couple of times, by the way. So I really wanted to just kind of go through. There is so much going on with future loop and technology. If any of you watch it, give me a second here. Here's the latest, just a little yesterday. It's quite funny, but Microsoft adopts OpenAI GPT-3 natural language technology to automatically write code. So essentially, if they aren't having people write code for their programs, GPT-3 is an artificial intelligent language that's actually writing code for their software. So if you're a software engineer who's just a code writer, be careful. You're going to need to use the right brain side of your equation to automate, to create versus just straight automation. That is a huge, huge move. Germany gives the green light to driverless vehicles on public roads. We're a little bit behind that, but you're looking at that, by the way, it's a little German minivan, which they show. Drones in the backyard, the FAA grants home delivery to Flytrex. So that's the FAA now granting home delivery to Flytrex. So start looking for drones delivering things in your neighborhood soon. I'm a little bit remiss in that, but it's kind of an interesting piece. There's supercomputers they're designing for space. Domino's unveils AI pizza scanner to achieve pizza perfection. So they're using an AI pizza scanner to make sure the pizza they make for you is, quote, perfect, according to artificial intelligence and how it's made. These are all just the things going on. I mean, you think about that. Domino's Pizza, artificial intelligence, really? It's kind of a crazy. Optogenetics used for the first time to help a blind patient see again. Think about that. Helping the blind see. That's biblical, right? You're now seeing it here in optogenetics as well. New technology breaks the mold for 3D printing medical implants. So basically, they're able to 3D print customized, let's call it devices, customized, knees, customized hips. Now, these are on the forefront of what's going on. There's more that's happening. There's a few just unbelievably stellar ideas. And that's just, I haven't even included the space in there as well. But there's so much to look, and what I really think it is, there's so much to be hopeful for. But like I said, these things are unbelievable in technology. The things that happen day to day are unbelievable as well. So I think as I really go back to the bigger picture for what we started to talk about today, and looking at the title of our webcast today, I would say expect the unexpected. That is really the key in technology, unfortunately sometimes happening to the family, but be prepared for it so that you know what to do when it happens, because you will revert to your highest level of preparation when crisis hits. And crisis could be new technologies, it could be health in the family, it could be financial. So with that, I hopefully today, you see I did fill in quite a bit. You're probably sick of hearing me talk. Maybe I should have brought Zach back in, maybe I could have brought Peter, Lisa back in as well. But this adaptability occurs sometimes even on technology when you give somebody 10 minutes and then you have to fill it. Fortunately for all of you who know me, I have no problem filling it. So with that, we are Gentian, and we've got a new tagline here. We are called Gentian Retirement. With those of you who are with us, it's Gentian Retirement. It's plan it, live it, and give it. So on behalf of the Gentian team here, we really appreciate you. And this week, stay safe, stay positive, and be grateful. Thank you all.